So it only points at the stage. So if you're not supposed to be here, don't worry. We are definitely a listening room. So when the performer's performing or I'm talking, we are listening because that's a courteous thing to do. And of course, we're still following the CDC guys and saying suggested but not required on the masks. And we're an all-volunteer staff. So tonight, I always do this the other way. Tonight, the one who keeps us in line, Jennifer. And then Tim's working sound and camera. And I'm doing whatever else needs doing. So we're one short. Our regular guy, Joel, had a paid gig tonight. And somehow he figured that was more important than volunteering here at the coffee house.
He's off the Christmas list.
That's it for sure. Yeah. So we've been in operation for 51 years. This whole thing started in 1970. A guy named Dave Humphrey put this together and been going strong ever since. And so tonight we've got Rory Makem here in the house. Now, coffee house. Did I lose myself again? There I am. This is his, whoa, hello. This is his first time in the on the Two-Way Street stage, so we have to be kind to him and not, throw anything, that sort of thing. There's a flyer that gives you a whole bio on Rory here. And so Rory, would you like to play some music?
All right, that's why I'm here.
Take it away.
Well, hello. And I can't even express to you how happy I am to be here. I've been sitting at home by myself for 2 years. I had my daughter's old Barbies and I set them up in a row there, and I've been playing to them for 2 years. And though they're beautiful, they didn't sing along. You were hardly singing along there yourself, were you? Are you afraid? You're afraid to sing along.
I scare people when I sing.
Ah, no, you wouldn't, Chuck.
Oh, yeah.
Back when I was in college, I played at a place called O'Neill's Irish Castle in Poughkeepsie, New York. And there was one night Chuck was the only one there. And he sang every song. One day I was coming through Poughkeepsie with my father, and I said, why don't we stop into O'Neill's for a bite to eat? And O'Neill's was a restaurant in front of this hotel, and they had a big giant suit of armor right in the front of the building. And as soon as we pulled in, my father went, there were no suits of armor in Ireland. He wouldn't go in. He wouldn't. Well, would you help me sing a song? All right, well, I'll start you off easy. This song bought all my college school books. You're afraid to be singing, aren't you? You need to shout it out. You got to roar to the roof here. If I sang like that, I wouldn't have been able to eat at the dinner table when I was growing up. Do you not know the words? Are you waiting for an easier song? Because you're going to be waiting a long, long time. It says, you really can just mumble the first bit. Ah-dee-doo, da-day, ah-dee-doo, ah-dee-day-dee. He whistled and he sang till the green woods rang, and he won the heart of a lady. It's the story of my life. Try it. and he won the heart of a lady. Ah, you were singing well. Doesn't it feel great to sing out loud with people? Well, my father always said singing runs in our family like a wooden leg. My granny was a great singer, and she knew hundreds and hundreds of songs. Her name was Sarah Makem. And she came from what my father always called the Republic of South Armagh, where we serve neither king nor Kaiser, thanks be to God. Wasn't he right? They were raised in the north of Ireland. My granny was born in 1900. And she really never left Katy. She came to America here a few times to visit us, and we'd go over every year. But they were raised in an enclave, a Republican enclave, the Irish Republican enclave. And one day she lived on Victoria Street, and there was a shop called Bridgie's at the top of the street. And it's where she bought her groceries, you know, her celery and her snuff and her potatoes. Well, one day in about 1973, we were in the height of the Troubles in the north of Ireland. And the British Army were encamped in Katy, and they'd patrol the village 3 times a day. 8 soldiers, fully armed, and the helmets and the flak jackets would roam about the town, keeping the peace, if you can imagine. And one day, my granny was coming out of Bridgie's, and who held the door for her but a young British soldier? And my granny said, "Thank you, son. I hope the good Lord will save you a cool spot in hell." She was great. And in the late 40s and early 50s, a man named Sean O'Boyle got interested in my granny. He was a folklorist from Armagh. And a man named Peter Kennedy from England contacted Sean and said, "I'm coming to Ireland to collect songs." And he said, "I know the very woman we need to go see." And they went to see my granny, and they recorded her singing a bunch of songs for use on a new radio show that was going to be broadcast throughout the British Isles. They didn't have a name for it at the time. And they recorded my granny singing a great song. As I rode out on the May morning, right early, I met me love upon the way. Lord, but she was early, and she sang the doodle-doodle-doodle-doodle-doodle-dee. She hated on the that song. And Peter thought so much of it, he named the program after that song. And every Sunday morning throughout the British Isles for over 27 years, my granny's voice awakened 500,000 households. And she said, had I known it was going out to that many people, I wouldn't have opened my mouth. But she knew great songs. There was one she learned when she was a child. It was in her school book. And it was a poem. And she remembered it for her whole life. And later in life, she put it to an old Scottish air that everybody knows. And in 1974, my father and Liam Clancy decided to get back together. He hardly knew he was coming apart, but they decided to get back together. And they were looking for songs to do, and my father remembered Granny singing this song. And he wrote home to her and said, "Ma, would you send me that song about the rose?" She said, "I will," and she wrote it on the first page of a notebook, and then filled the rest of the notebook with this song. I'm doing this one for you. This is Granny's. Just think it's hundreds of years old. But if it weren't for my granny, nobody would know it. When I was 21, I heard a wise man say, "Give crowns and pounds and guineas, but not your heart away. Give pearls and rubies, but keep your fancy free." But I was 21, no use to talk to me. And when I was 21, I heard him say again that a heart out of the bosom, 'tis never given in vain. It's paid in sorrow plenty and sold for endless rue. And now I am 22, And oh, 'tis true, 'tis true. And red is the rose that yonder garden grows. Fair is the lily of the valley. Clear is the water that flows from the Boyne. But my love is fairer than he. Come over the hills, my bonny Irish lass. Come over the hills to your darling. You choose the road, love, and I'll make the vow that I'll be your true love forever. And red is the rose that yonder garden grows. Fair is the lily of the valley. Clear is the water that flows from the Boyne. But my love is fairer than he. 'Twas down by Killarney's green woods that we strayed, when the moon and the stars they were shining. The moon shone its rays on her locks and golden hair. She swore she'd be my love forever. Sing it now. Red is the rose that yonder garden grows. Fair is the lily, yes. Clear is the water that flows from the Boyne. But my love is fairer than he. It's not for the parting with my sister Kate. It's not for the grief of my mother. It's all for the loss of my bonny Irish lass. But my heart is breaking forever. On your own. For the Scots now. You'll take the high road, and I'll take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland. For me and my true love will never meet again. On the bonny That was one of Granny's songs. Granny was always singing, to my grandfather's consternation. I remember one time I was in the 4th grade. I was born in a town called Drogheda. It's kind of funny. A man brought up the name Oliver Cromwell to me today. He says, Rory, you wouldn't have been too fond of Cromwell. I said, no, I would not have been. Drogheda was the first town that Cromwell went to, and he sacked it and burned it to the ground when he first got there. That's where I was born. But my father saw the writing on the wall back in the late 60s and early 70s and decided to move the family back to America. And he actually met my mother right here in Chicago. My mother is a Chicago person. She's from Garfield Park. It was a little different back in the 40s. But we lived in a town called Dover, New Hampshire. And that's where all of my father's aunts and uncles emigrated to, all but my granny. My granny was at the train station to go down to Cove to take the boat to America in 1917. And who tapped her on the shoulder but my granda? And he said, where are you going? I'm going to America. He said, I don't want you to go. I want you to stay here and I want to marry you. And she said, where would I get the money to get married? He said, how much does that ticket to America cost? And it was something like $18. And he said, that'd be enough for us to get married. And they got married and they stayed in Ireland. And I'm thrilled that they did. But I was in the 4th grade. I was drug up. Anybody else go to Catholic school? There was groans of empathy, I suppose. I was raised by the Sisters of Little or No Mercy. But my principal was Sister Monica. And in the 4th grade, on St. Patrick's Day, it was a big special day. I didn't know what was going on, but Sister Monica came in the class and said, everyone come out into the hallway. We have a special treat for you. And we get out in the hallway, and who's sitting there in a chair at the top of the hallway? My Aunt Molly, my granny's sister. And Monica knew her from years earlier, and she said, Molly's going to sing us a bunch of songs. And then at the end, Aunt Molly saw me, and she said, Rory, why don't you come up and sing a song? And mind you, till this time in my academic career, the nuns didn't take to me. But I sang one of my granny's songs, and from that day forward, I could do no wrong. I think it was the subject matter. Now, when I was a wee thing, I heard my mother say that I was a foolish girl, Daisy led astray. And before I would work, rather sport and play with my Johnny on the banks of red roses. On the banks of red roses, my love and I sat down. And I took out my fiddle for to play me love a tune. In the middle of the tune, she sighed and she said, "Ah, Johnny, lovely Johnny, do not leave me." But he took her to his cot and he treated her to tea, saying, "Drink, my dearest Mary, come along with me." Saying, "Drink, my dearest Mary, come along with me to the bonny sweet banks of red roses." They walked and they talked till they came unto a cave where Johnny all the day had been digging up a grave. Where Johnny all the day had been digging up a grave for to lay his lassie low among red roses. He pulled out his penknife, it was both long and sharp, and he plunged it right into his own dear Mary's heart. He plunged it right into his own dear Mary's heart, and he's left her lying low mother say that I was a foolish girl and Daisy led astray. Before I would work, other sport and play with my Johnny on the banks of red roses. The nuns loved it. And we were very proud of the singing in our family. It goes back farther than my granny. She had aunts and uncles who were all great singers. One time, my father had an Uncle Paddy, a great Uncle Paddy, and he disappeared from work. Nobody knew where he was, and they asked the family, "Where's Paddy?" His name was Paddy Green. My granny was a Green. "Where's Paddy?" "I don't know." And this went on for 2 weeks. "Paddy's not coming to work today. I don't know where he is." 2 weeks later, on the Sunday, Paddy shows up at home, and he's got a trophy. He'd gone to Scotland, and he won a singing competition. And he came home, and he put the trophy on the shelf and said, "Ma, that's for you." How about that? But not to be lost, the other side of my family, the Makems, out in Derrynoose, were great singers too. We don't know what happened through the years here. The bloodline's been watered down, but sure, they were great singers 100 years ago. My great-grandfather was a fabulous singer, and his sister Kate was a fabulous, fabulous singer. But one day I found a reel-to-reel in my father's closet. And I took it home. It said, John Moore, it said on the reel-to-reel. And I took it home and I put it on my reel-to-reel player and I listened to it, and it was fabulous. And I could tell my father's voice in the background asking about what the songs were. A few days later, I asked my father, "Dad, who's John Moore?" He said, "He's just a man who lived with your Uncle Jack out in Derrynoose." And I thought this was strange, though it wasn't so strange to group people out in townlands in Ireland when they were doing census. They would group them all. You might have 30 people, say, living at one address. But John Moore lived with my Uncle Jack. And years later, my cousin John Makem says, "Oh, no, John Moore was your father's cousin." But when my granda was little, his 15-year-old sister had a baby out of wedlock. And in the 1990s, my father was still embarrassed to tell me that there was a bastard in the family. Can you imagine that? It was an embarrassment to them. He held that with his whole life. But John Moore had a great song that I think was about me. And you're going to help me sing it, aren't you? That depends on what? I don't know. I will teach it to you. It says, see if I can remember it now. Everyone does it but you, young lad. Everyone does it but you. And you'll be to blame if you don't do the same. Everyone does it but you. Could you get that? Very easy. When I told you you'll be waiting a long time for an easier song, I was wrong. This song's easier. It goes like this. Everyone does it but you. Yes. Everyone. And you'll be to blame if you don't do the same. Sure you get it. When I first went to school, sure I was such a fool. The master to me, he would say, "You are a bad boy, this place you'll destroy if you don't get your own way." He gave me a sum I could never have done. If tried, never could I do. He says you're an ass, you're the worst in the class. Everyone does it but you. Try it. Everyone does it but you, young lad. Everyone does it but you. And you'll be to blame if you don't do the same. Everyone does it but you. Last Sunday I went for enjoyment was spent to a friend's Christmas party and ball. While the ladies was there, I do declare, I was enticed with them all. Each belle had her bow and her sweet mistletoe, enjoying an old kiss or two. But a young lady called Grace, she peeped up in my face and said, "Everyone does it but since we were wed, and still there's no sign of an heir. My wife, she goes wild for the want of a child, and often she'll shout and she'll swear. My sister Kate has already got 8, and last time our Mary had 2. I'm afraid, my dear John, there's something going wrong. Everyone does it but you. Everyone does it but you, young lad. Everyone does it but you. And you'll be to blame if you don't do the same. Everyone does it but you. Everyone does it but you, young lad. Everyone does it but you. And you'll be to blame if you don't do the same. Everyone does it but you. There you are. Have you ever heard that song before? Now you've got a new song to sing at the next party you go to. You'll be the life of the party. When we were growing up, we got the history of our people sitting at every night at dinner. We'd sit down, and I learned more sitting at my kitchen table listening to my father talk than I learned in the 25 years I was in school. It was mesmerizing, and he talked a lot about Scotland and how he always called them the same band of tinkers. And he told me one story, I remember it well, and I went to Lake George in New York with some friends, and there was Ticonderoga. And I said, Jesus, I remember a story about that. It was about a man named Duncan. He was in the Highland Brigade, you know, the Black Watch, the Black 47 they'd called them, or it was the Highland Foot Brigade, the Black Watch. They were the fiercest fighting group in all the world at the time. They were put together merely to protect the Highlanders' cattle and sheep, but they became so trustworthy for the king, he sent them all over the world to fight his battles. Well, one day Duncan was sitting at home in the Highlands, and a man he knew came running to the door, and he knocked on the door, and he said, Duncan, you have to hide me. The police are after me, and I need you to pledge your word you won't say anything. He said, I pledge my word. You're a man of the Black Watch, and I will protect you. And he put him in a cave on his property and brought him food. A little while later, the authorities arrived and were looking for this man. And Duncan said, well, what did he do? And the authorities said, he murdered your cousin. And still Duncan never gave him up. And that night Duncan was sleeping, and he had a dream. At the foot of his bed was his cousin. And his cousin said, Duncan, you have wronged me, and you're going to die a horrible, painful death in a place called Ticonderoga. And Duncan, for weeks, he was asking every learned person, every traveled person he knew, he asked, have you ever heard of a place called Ticonderoga? No, never have. Well, 2 months later, the king ordered the Black Watch over to America to fight the French-Indian War. And when he landed in New York and said, you're going up to Ticonderoga, Duncan knew exactly what that meant. And he knew he wouldn't be coming home. They say when the battle took place over in the Highlands in Scotland at Inverary Castle, the entire battle played out in the clouds above the castle. Duncan never did return. Frenchmen call carry on, and the Indians Ticonderoga. And the words struck Duncan like a thunderbolt there, for everyone knew of the warning. So give us a tune to remember me, boy, for tomorrow I'll not be returning. And up to the Champlain came the Highland Brigade. The pipes and the drummers played Scotland the Brave. They sailed home, the pipers' refrain was, oh, how cool Wally. Well, the gunpowder flashed, the Highlanders tied, never again to walk the hillside. In the wilderness green, in the sun and the rain, it's there forever remaining. And up to the Champlain came the Highland Brigade. The pipes and the drummers played Scotland the Brave. When they sailed home, the pipers' refrain was, oh, how cool Wally. So I've told it to you as they told it to me, of one Duncan Campbell and the Highland Brigade. Where the campfires crackle and the summer times wane, through the mist on the water comes the piper's refrain. And up to the Champlain came the Highland Brigade. The pipes and the drummers played Scotland the Brave. But when they sailed home, the piper's refrain was, oh, how cool Wally. Sure, I went on like a 10 past, right? We got plenty of time. When I was growing up, my father's favorite time in history became mine. The Battle of 1798 in Ireland, or the rebellion it was. It was hundreds of skirmishes all over the country, fought down in Wexford and up in Armagh and down in Antrim. And why we like it so much is because it was the Protestants and the Catholics fighting together to try to get rule of our own country, try to get rid of an invading force. It never went too well, and they weren't very well organized. It was led mostly by Protestants, men like Roddy McCorley and Henry Joy McCracken and his sister Mary Ann McCracken. And today, March 4th, is the birthday of bold Robert Emmet, the darling of Erin. They were all young men, and they went around Ireland trying to get soldiers, and they made armies mostly with farmers and school teachers, and they armed them with pikes. Do you know what the pikes were? Big long staffs. They were about 7 feet long, and they had a sickle bit on it and then a pointy end. And they were fighting the most well-trained, well-equipped army on the face of the planet at the time, the British Redcoats. So they were wiped out quite a bit. I have a story that has to do with a man named Thomas Russell, who was one of these United Irishmen who went around the country. And he was up in County Down one particular time, trying to drum up an army. And all the men in the pub were staring at him. They didn't know what to make of him, but they were hoping he was one of them, the United Irishmen. Into our townland on a night of snow rode a man from God knows where. None of us bid him stay or go, or deemed him friend nor damned him foe, but we stabled his big roan mare. Round our townland were decent folk, and if he didn't speak, well, none of us spoke, and we sat till the fire burned low. We're a civil sort round our wee place, and we made a circle wide round Andy Lemon's cheerful blaze, and we wished the man his length and a good end to his ride. Well, he smiled, and under his slouchy hat says he, "There's a bit of a joke in that, for we ride in different ways." Now, whilst we smoked, we watched him stare from his seat for an instant. I nudged Joe Moore and says, "You wouldn't be on for asking who he's for meeting there, how far he's got to go." But Joey wouldn't dare, nor woolly boy Scott, and he took no drink, neither cold nor hot, this man from God knows where. It was closing time and late for by when us ones breathed the air. I never saw it worse, may I live or die, than the sleet that night, and says I, "You'll find he's for stopping there." But at skreek of dawn through the gable pane, I watched him spur through the pelting rain, and I juked from his roving eye. 2 winters more than the troubled year, when the best that a man could feel was the pike that he kept in Highlands near, till the blood of hate and the blood of fear was redder than the rust on the steel. Us ones quit from minding the farms, let them take what we give by the weight of our arms from St. Field to Kilkeel. In the time of the hurry, we had no lead. We all of us fought with the rest. And if ever a one shook like a trembling reed, none of us ever gave hint nor heed. Not ever, even we'd guessed. We men of the North had a word to say, and we said it then in our own dour way, and we spoke out as we thought was best. All over Ulster the wheemen cried for the standing crops in the land. But many's the sweetheart, and many's the bride, would have liever has gone to where he had died, and mourned her, lone by her man. But us ones weathered the thick of it, and we used to dander along and sit in Andy's, side by side. What with discourse going to and fro, the night be wearing thin, but never so late when we'd rise to go, someone would say, "Do you mind on snow on the man that come wandering in?" We'd beat the fall to the talk again, if by any chance he was one of them. This man that rode like the wind. It was getting past the heat of the year, and I rode to Newtown Fair. I sold as I could. The dealers were near. £2.8 for the Inish steer, nothing at all for the mare. I met Mickey on the throng of the street, and says he, "The grass has grown under our feet since they hanged young Warwick here." And he told me that Boney had promised help to a man in Dublin town. So says he, "If you've hung your pike on the shelf, you'd best go home hot foot by yourself and once more take her down." So by Cumber Road I trotted the grey and never cut corn till Killalay stood high in the rising ground. For a wheen of days we sat waiting word to go at it like men. But no French ship sailed into Cloghee Bay. And we got the dark news on a harvest day that the cause was lost again. And Joey and me and Woolly Boy Scott, we all agreed would leave us not be found in the thick of the slain. By Downpatrick jail I was bound to fare on a day I'll remember feth. For when I reached the prison square, the people were gathering hundreds there, and you couldn't hear stir nor breath. The soldiers were standing grim and tall round a scaffold built for the wall, when a man stepped out for death. Now, I was braving near the edge of the throng, yet I knowed his face again, and I knowed his set, and I knowed his walk, and the sound of his strange up-country talk, for he spoke out right and plain. And then he bowed his head to the swinging rope, and I said, "Please, God," to his dying hope, and amen to his dying prayer, that the wrongs would cease and the right prevail, for that man they hanged in Downpatrick jail was the man from God knows where. Oh, see the fleet-foot hosts of men, sweet with faces one, from farmstead and from Fisher's Cot, along the banks of Bann. They come with vengeance in their eyes, too late are they. For young Roddy McCorley goes to die on the bridge of June today. Up the narrow streets he steps, smiling proud and young. About the hand-rope on his neck, the golden ringlets clung. There is never a tear in his blue eyes, but glad and bright are they, as young Roddy McCorley goes to die on the bridge of June today. When he last stepped off that street, his shining pike in hand, behind him marched in grim array a sober, earnest band. For Antrim town, he led them to the fray. And young Roddy McCorley goes to die on the bridge of June today. There's never a one of all your dead more bravely fell in fray than he who marches to his death on the bridge of June today. True to the last, he treads the upward way. And young Roddy McCorley goes to die on the bridge of June today. There you are, the history of 1798 in 5 minutes. I'm going to do one more, we'll sing together, and we're going to take a short break. Give you all a chance to get up and visit the concession stand. Or I'm sure there'll be bathrooms available. And I do have some CDs. I found them under my couch this afternoon. I'm not too sure what's there. I do know there's a couple of albums I did with my brothers, and there's one of mine there, it's an EP, and there's one I did with my friends, the Spain Brothers, and we had a lot of our old folky friends join us. People like Gordon Bach and Noel Paul Stuckey and Jonathan Edwards, and God rest him, Bill Staines, and Dave Mallet. And we sing a bunch of old songs, and we do have, I have one there that's also a DVD. I got 3 of them, and it's all that's left. So just keep in mind when you get up there that I've got a starving family here in Chicago. And I've got a starving family in New Hampshire. And I've got a starving family back in Ireland. And little Timmy would love it if you bought 4 or 5 of them CDs and brought it home. Right us. I'm a rambler, I'm a gambler, I'm a long ways from home. And if you don't like me, well, leave me alone. I'll eat when I'm hungry, I'll drink when I'm dry, and a moonshine don't kill me. I've been a moonshiner for many years. I spend all my money on pints of green beer. I'll go to some hole, I set up my still, and I'll make you a gallon for a $2 bill. I'm a rambler, and if you don't like me, well, leave. I'll eat, I'll drink when I'm dry, and a moonshine don't kill me. I'll go to some hollow in this country, 10 gallons of wash, I can go on a spree. No women to follow, the world is all mine, but sure I love them so well as I love the moonshine. Now, I'm a rambler, and if you don't like me, well, leave me alone. I'll eat when I'm hungry, I'll drink when I'm dry, and a moonshine don't kill me. Oh, moonshine, dear moonshine, oh, how I love thee. You kill me out, father, but dare you try me. Now bless all moonshiners, bless all moonshine. Sure the breath smells as sweet as the dew on the vine. On your own now. I'm a rambler, I'm a gambler, I'm a long ways from home. And if you don't like me, well, leave me alone. I'll eat when I'm hungry, I'll drink when I'm dry, and a moonshine don't kill me. And we're back in 15 minutes, 10 minutes. got guitar there, Tim? It's of a brave young highwayman, the story we will tell. His name was Willie Brennan, and in Ireland he was from the Kilworth Mountains, his wild career. Brennan, well, he nobleman before shook with fear, and it's Brennan on the moor. Brennan on the moor, oh brave and undaunted was young Brennan on the moor. A brace of loaded pistols he carried night and day. He never robbed a poor man upon the King's Highway, but what he taken from the rich, like Turpin and Black Bess, he always did divide it with the widow in distress. Did young Brennan on the moor, Brennan on the moor, oh brave and undaunted was young Brennan on the moor. One day upon the highway, as Willie he went down, he met the mayor of Cashel, a mile outside the town. Now the mayor he knew his features, and he says, young man, says he, your name is Willie Brennan, you must come along with me. And this Brennan on the moor, Brennan on the moor, oh brave and undaunted was young Brennan on the moor. Can't remember the words. Now Brennan's wife had gone to town, provisions for to buy, and when she saw her Willie, she commenced to weep and cry. Said, hang the need at Tangley, as soon as Willie spoke, she handed him a blunderbuss from underneath her cloak. Oh, young Brennan on the moor, Brennan on the moor, oh brave and undaunted was young Brennan on the moor. Now with this loaded blunderbuss, the truth I will unfold. He made the mayor to tremble, and he robbed him of his gold. 100 pounds was offered for his apprehension there, so he with horse and saddle to the mountains did repair. Here's to us, who's like us. Damn few and they're all dead. That song, Brennan on the Moor, it's an old Irish song, and my father used to play with these three fellows from Tipperary named Clancy, Paddy, Tom, and Liam. And they used to open every show with that song. First, they decided to start, back in the day, there was only one microphone on stage. And the boys would come out. My father played the bagpipes. He was a gentleman bagpiper. And to start the shows, they would come running out with my father playing the pipes. But the crowd would just get so noisy, they couldn't hear Liam playing guitar. So he stopped playing the pipes. And they would open every show with Brennan on the Moor. But the old version used to go, Brennan on the Moor, Brennan on the moor. And Liam said, no, we need to speed it up and make it sound like a horse galloping. And they did. And that's the only version I know. But those were my heroes. When I was about 13 or 14, which is the age my own daughter is right now, I got into my father's record collection. I couldn't be bothered with the music all my friends were listening to. I wanted to listen to folk music. I loved it. First, I listened to all his records, and I was listening to the Dubliners and the Coreys. And then I was getting into, I found this magical band called the Weavers. And Pete became my hero, and Woody Guthrie and the Almanac Singers. And one day, my father was on the phone with an old friend from the Greenwich Village days named Norman Verchet. And he said, my boy is listening to all these old records. Is that right? And about a week later, a package arrived for me from Norman. And it was all these old blues records, Muddy Waters and John Lee Hooker. But the ones I loved the most were Sonny Terry, Brownie McGee, and Mississippi John Hurt. Well, my heroes. One of them, Liam Clancy was my hero. And when he lived in Vancouver at the time, or Calgary, and when they'd come to New Hampshire, he'd always stay at our house, and he'd stay in my bed. He got my room, and I was very sore about that. One day they had the day off, and my father said, come on, everybody, we'll pile in the wood-paneled station wagon. I'm sure we all had one of them. And we'll go up to Maine, we'll go to the Nubble Light, and we'll look at the lighthouse and run on the rocks. So we all piled in, but Liam turned around and ran back in the house, and he grabbed a toothpick, and he put it in his pocket. And we got out to Nubble Lighthouse, and we're running on the rocks, looking in the tide pools, and Liam says, Rory, come over here. And I went over, and he bent down, and he pulled off what we call a snail. And he says, you know what we call those? I said, I don't. He said, we call those periwinkles, or shellicky-bookies, they called them in Tipperary. Do you remember that? Shellicky, shellicky, bookie, put out all your hardens, all the ladies are coming to see ya. Well, that's what they called them. And Liam took the snail, or the shellicky bookie, and he took the toothpick out of his pocket, and he's looking right at me. And he pulled the snail out of the shell, and he says, they taste best when you let them crawl down on their own. And he put it on his tongue. And I went, that man is my hero. Well, they were touring in Canada one time, and a man who was a puppet maker came to the show, and he gave my father a puppet of the cobbler. My father used to sing a song called The Cobbler that he got from his aunt, Anne Jane Green. She used to sing it with her cousin. They faced each other and worked on each other's shoes. But it became a big song for my father. And Liam got a puppet of the Dutchman. And Siobhan Clancy still has it at her house. And for years I was telling the story of Liam getting the song The Dutchman. And I had mixed it up because it's very similar to the same story of Arlo Guthrie getting the city of New Orleans. So I mixed that up, but David has straightened me out. If it wasn't for you, David, I'd still be telling an erroneous story. Or you've corrected one of my erroneous stories. He got the song, he was playing a solo gig in Detroit, and an old friend from here in Chicago named Michael Smith went to see him. And Michael gave him this song. Or he sang it for him, and Liam just took it. But he ran with it. People in Ireland think this song's an Irish song. Maybe you can help me sing it. Dutchman's not the kind of man to keep his thumb jammed in the dam that holds his dreams in. But that's a secret only Margaret knows. When Amsterdam is golden, in the morning Margaret brings him breakfast. She believes him. He thinks the tulips bloom beneath the snows. He's mad as he can be, but Margaret only sees that sometimes. Sometimes she sees her unborn children in his eyes. Try it. Let us go to the banks of the ocean, where the walls rise above the Zuider Zee. Long ago, I used to be a young man, and dear Margaret remembers that for me. The Dutchman still wears wooden shoes. His cap and coat are patched with love that Margaret Margaret sewed in. Sometimes he thinks he's still in Rotterdam. He watches tugboats down canals and calls out to them when he thinks he knows the captain. Margaret comes to take him home again through unforgiving streets that trip him though she holds his arm. Sometimes he thinks that he's alone and he calls her name. Let us go to the banks of the ocean, where the walls rise above the Zuyder Zee. Long ago, I used to be a young man, and dear Margaret remembers that for me. The windmills swirl the winter in. She winds his muffler tighter, and they sit in the kitchen. And the tea with whiskey keeps away the dew. He sees her for a moment, calls her name, she makes his bed up, humming some old love song. She learned it when the tune was very new. He hums a line or two, they hum together in the night. The Dutchman falls asleep, and Margaret blows the candle out. Let us go to the banks of the ocean, where the walls rise above the Zuyder Zee. Long ago, I used to be a young man, and dear Margaret remembers that for me. Let us go to the banks of the ocean, where the walls rise above the Zuyder Zee. Long ago, I used to be a young man, and dear Margaret remembers that for me. Isn't that a beautiful song? Right here in Chicago. Michael Smith, who we lost here in the past year or two, didn't we? Tell you, I was such a big fan of the Weavers. It was the strangest thing when I was in high school and there'd be a big party. And, you know, somebody would say, Rory has a lot of... Rory, would you bring some Seeger? I said, oh, I'll bring some Seeger. It wasn't the Seeger they were looking for, but Jesus, I had a great time. And I think the brains of that outfit, besides Toshi, was Lee Hayes. The man was just brilliant. And he wrote so many good songs. He wrote this song, and I learned it years ago when I was courting my wife. So on Valentine's Day, I wouldn't have to buy roses. They're very expensive. I would go to the store on Valentine's Day and say, give me 7 daffodils. How much will that be? That'll be $3.99. Jesus, great. I'm going to keep this a tradition. Thank you, Lee Hayes. You saved me a fortune in flowers. I haven't any fortunes. I haven't any land. Not even a paper dollar to crinkle in my hand. But I can show you morning on 1,000 hills and kiss you and give you 7 daffodils. I haven't any fortunes to buy you pretty things, but I can weave you moonbeams for necklaces and rings, and I can show you morning on 1,000 hills, and kiss you and give you 7 daffodils. Seven golden daffodils lying in the sun will light our way to evening when our day is done, and I can give you music and a crust of bread, a pillow of piney boughs to rest your head, and I can show you morning on 1,000 hills, and kiss you and give you 7 daffodils. That's our song. Me and my wife. That's our song. My father was right, I think, to get us out of Ireland at the time we were growing up. All my cousins are quite a bit older than I am. I'm the baby of my generation. And my cousin Peter's 76. He's the oldest of our generation. And they all grew up in the Troubles in the 70s in South Armagh, in the north of Ireland, and they saw the worst of it. There was something my father hid from us. Here in America, it was easy to hide it from us. In 1978, it was the height of what would be called the show band era. The show bands in Ireland were huge. They just traveled all over the country, playing in music halls to all the teenagers, and didn't matter whether you were green or orange, you just went to these dances and enjoyed the music. And probably the most famous band of all of them was called the Miami Show Band. The Miami were made up of Protestants and Catholics. In fact, 2 of the guys were from the north. One was the saxophone player. His brother was in the B Specials, and his father was the president of the local Orange Lodge up in Tyrone. And Fran O'Toole was from Dublin, but they say he was the greatest R&B singer Dublin's ever produced. He said they make Van Morrison look like a fool. Well, one day they were playing in Banbridge, County Down, and they had a great night. And one of the guys, after the show, went up to Northern Antrim, where his parents lived, and the rest of them piled in their Volkswagen bus. This was July 31st, 1978. And they were coming down out of Banbridge, coming into Newry, which is a border town. And just north of Newry, they were stopped by what appeared to be the British Army, which wasn't unusual in the 70s. We've been stopped many times. They stop you and search your car. But it wasn't so much the British Army, it was the UVF. And their plan was to plant a bomb in the Volkswagen van. And it was to go off just at the border before Omeath. And this would set off, it would close the border down, and it would make these show bands look like they're running bombs and guns for the IRA. This was the plan. And it turns out this came down from the highest echelons of the British government. This was okayed. The only reason they knew it was the UVF is because the bomb went off as they were putting the bomb in the van, and they found a man's arm with the tattoo UVF on it. And there was one member of the band, Stephen Travers. He was the bass player. And he was closest to the van when the bomb went off, and the car door blew off the van and hit Stephen and knocked him 20 yards back into the cow field. But he didn't die. And when the bomb went off, mayhem ensued. Everybody ran, and the soldiers who were there opened fire on the band and killed them all. Except for Stephen. He laid in the field, and he said the only reason he knew he was alive, he could feel the rain falling on his face. There are long and winding roads up and down these counties. When the dance hall closes, you've packed away your old guitar. Well, I bet we've driven down all of them, and the darkness never scared me, 'cause I'm so proud of the name that's taken us all this far. We are the Miami, the Miami. Now ain't that the place where the rain don't fall? The Miami, the Miami. Now they're weeping in the old dance hall. They're weeping in the old dance hall. Now tell me where you go to forget these troubles and borders, where the orange and the green are just colors on a spotlit stage. And there's no ill divisions between this country's sons and daughters, and the rhythms glide across the rhythms of the golden age. Coming from the Miami, Miami. Now ain't that the place where the rain don't fall? The Miami, the Miami. Now they're weeping in the old dance hall. They're weeping in the old dance hall. Now there's Fran still singing like a dream across those dark Bourne mountains, and Brian and Tony rock solid on the old front line. And the boys and girls around this countryside all singing and shouting. They'll play that show band music till the end of time. They are the Miami, the Miami. Now ain't that the place where the rain don't fall? The Miami, the Miami. They're weeping in the old dance hall. Weeping in the old dance hall. They're weeping for the Miami, the Miami. Now ain't that the place where the rain don't fall? The Miami, the Miami. Now they're weeping in the old dance hall. They're weeping in the old dance hall. Can you imagine targeting a band for political purposes? It's just awful. There's a documentary on Netflix called The Massacre of the Miami Show Band. I encourage you all to look it up. Stephen Travers works tirelessly to get the truth. He worked tirelessly, and we finally got it, and now he's working on reconciliation. We're close. You remember my wee lad Sammy. He was the best lad you could meet. It seems like Only yesterday he was running round our street. Of course you remember Sammy. Sure, you knew him well. He used to run the messages for Henderson's Hotel. Aye. That was my wee lad Sammy. He was wee as wee lads go. But he was a desperate lad for fighting. He'd fight with friend or foe. Of course, there was no harm in it back then. It was only childish fun. And it never really mattered whether he lost or won. Until one day, young Devlin moved into our street. And he'd pick a row with Sammy every time they'd meet. I warned him about young Devlin to avoid him like the plague. Sure, there's hardly any need to tell you. Young Devlin was a tag. And evening after evening, coming home from school, he'd pick a row with Sammy about religion as a rule. Well, one word brung another, one orange and one green. Sammy slagged his holiness and Devlin damned the queen. And soon the fists were flying, as they often flew before, as they fought for faith and freedom, till they couldn't fight no more. Then the Devlins moved away. I think they owed some rent. I'm not sure where they went. The main thing was they went. I think wee Sammy missed him, but I was awful glad, for that old religious fighting can only lead to something bad. Well, time went on, and Sammy left his school days far behind. He forgot about young Devlin. He had other things to mind. And then, one Saturday evening, coming home from Windsor Park, he heard a Glen supporter make a cutting remark. He thought he recognized the voice, and as the man came past, wee Sammy nearly fainted. It was Devlin to the last. And Devlin recognized him too, and as the man came up, he said, "Hello, you orange blackmouth." And says Sam, "You papish pup." Well, one word brung another, one orange and one green. Sammy slagged his holiness, and Devlin damned the queen. And soon the fists were flying, as they often flew before, as they fought for faith and freedom, till they couldn't fight no more. Well, that was a strange coincidence, but Sammy soon forgot. He had other things to bother him, like redundancy and that. The place where he was working was sinking very low, and then one Friday evening, they told wee Sam he'd have to go. No job, no prospects. He was in a shocking state. He thought the only thing to do was to emigrate. I tried to talk him out of it, but he wouldn't change his mind. So he cleared off for America to see what he could find. And then one day I got a letter how he was thriving in New York. He had a motor car all his own and a flat beside his work. Well, the man that wrote "This World is Small" made an awful lot of sense. For Sammy soon wrote about another strange coincidence. One evening in Manhattan, he was walking down the street when he met the last man in this world he ever thought he'd meet. It was Devlin, sure as blazes, the lad he used to know, and wee Sammy nearly fainted when young Devlin said hello. They exchanged some pleasant greetings, as they often used to do, and then went in the nearest pub to have a drink or two. Well, one word brung another, one orange and one green. Sammy slagged his holiness, and Devlin damned the queen. And soon the fists were flying, as they often flew before, as they fought for faith and freedom, till they couldn't fight no more. And then they stopped fighting, and they started laughing. And they laughed till their sides were sore, as to the things that used to bother them in the life they shared before. And every week I got a letter, each one better than the last. But I got the funny feeling Sam was lonely for Belfast. More and more he spoke of Ireland and the people that he knew, and the letters started sounding lonely. And I was lonesome too. And then the letters, they stopped coming, and by God, I wondered why. I even wrote to ask him, but never got no reply. And then last week I got a letter, and it went on to explain young Devlin and wee Sammy had confronted once again. Of course, there was some trouble. That's natural, so to speak. But this time it was different, as the letter said last week. This time they fought together, young Devlin and wee Sam. They fought and died for freedom on a hill in Vietnam. One blue sky above us, one ocean lapping all our shores, one earth so green and round, who could ask for more? And because I love you, I'll give it one more try to show my rainbow race that it's too soon to die. Some wanna be like an ostrich, bury their heads in the sand. Some hope their plastic dreams can unclench all those greedy hands. Some wanna take the easy way, poison and bombs, they think we need 'em. You know you can't kill all the unbelievers, there's no shortcut to freedom. One blue sky above us, sing it. One ocean lapping all our shores, one earth so green and round, who could ask for more? And because I love you, I'll give it one more try to show my rainbow race that it's too soon to die. Go tell all the little children, tell all their mothers and fathers too. Now's our last chance to learn to share what's been given to me and you. One blue sky above us, one ocean lapping all our shores, one earth so green and round, who could ask for more? And because I love you, I'll give it one more try to show my rainbow race that it's too soon to die. Such a great song. It's a shame we have to keep singing it, though, isn't it? Now I have the saddest song ever written, and you're going to help me sing it. Terribly sad song about an old woman. Sorry, an old maid. No, my father always said, one of life's unclaimed treasures. I'm going to say, I hope so, and you roar back, I hope so. I say so. I say so. And then at the end, we all say it at the same time. Poor old woman. Could you get that? You could. In an attic room in Portadown, a poor old woman spread the news around. She'd been 60 long years in her old top flat, with no other company but her old tomcat. And I hope so, I say so, with no other company but her old tomcat. Everybody together. Poor old woman. Now this old woman sat in her fireside chair, when who do you think should appear right there? I'm your fairy godmother, have no fear, to grant 3 wishes they sent me here. And I hope so, I say so, to grant 3 wishes they sent me here. Everybody? Poor old woman. The old woman looked down at her empty purse. I could always use some cash, of course. The old fairy waved her wand around, and there on the table was £10,000, and I hope so, I say so. There on the table was £10,000. Everybody, poor old woman. Well, a lovely face and a figure divine. For just one day, well, I wish they were mine. The old fairy says, I'll have a go. And she made her look just like Bridget Bardot. And I hope so. Now we know how old the song is, right? She made her look just like Bridget Bardot. Poor old woman. Well, this lovely girl by the fireside sat. She started making eyes at her old tomcat. He's my only love, so here's my plan. Tonight, turn my cat into a handsome man, and I hope so, I say so. Tonight, turn my cat into a handsome man. Everybody, poor old woman. Now this handsome man to the woman drew near, and he whispered softly in her ear, the night is young, but you'll regret the day that you took me to the vet. And I hope so, I say so, that you took me to the vet. Last time, poor that's a terribly sad song. Can you imagine? And it's a strange thing. That's a true story. He was a great man from Canada. He was born and raised in Toronto, but his family's from Canso, Nova Scotia. And Stan was a rock and roller until he was about 24 years old. And he turned from the dark side to the light side, and he became a folk singer. And Stan Rogers probably wrote some of Canada's greatest songs. His most impressive song was about a boat. It was just a fishing boat that went down outside of Halifax. They say the hold was filled with Newfoundland screech, and that the sailors on board and the captain got into the screech, and they were coming into Halifax Harbor, and the captain said, "Take her between those 2 rocks, boys." There was only 1 rock, and they crashed into it, and the boat sank, and the sailors swam ashore, but they never forgot about their boat, the Mary Ellen Carter. And they went to the owners, and the owners said, "The insurance has paid us enough, let her rest, we're done with her." But the boys had been through too much on her, and they borrowed some boats from their friends, and that spring, they raised the Mary Ellen Carter from the depths of Halifax Harbor, which in the 1980s was not such a huge feat. But Stan wasn't really talking about the boat, was he? He was talking about us, you and me, and if you've been through a lot of things and been knocked down and dragged through the dirt, he says, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get up and rise again. Rise again, though your heart might be broken and life about to end. No matter what you've lost, be it a home, a love, a friend, like the Mary Ellen Carter. Rise again. Rise again, rise again, that her name not be lost to the knowledge of men. All those who loved her best and were with her till the end will make the Mary Ellen Carter rise again. last October in the pouring, driving rain. The skipper, he'd been drinking, and the lady felt no pain. Too close to 3 Mile Rock when she was down her mortal blow. The Mary Ellen Carter settled low. There was just us 5 aboard her when she finally was awash. We worked like hell to save her, all heedless of the cost. And the groan she gave as she went down caused us to proclaim that the Mary Ellen Carter rise again. Well, the owners wrote her off, not a nickel would they spend. She gave 20 years of service, boys, met the sorry end. The insurance paid the loss to us, so let her rest below. They laughed at us and said we had to go. We talked of her all winter, Sundays around the clock, for she's worth $250,000 floating at the dock. And with every jar that hit the bar, we swore we would remain and make the Mary Ellen Carter rise again. Here we go. Rise again, rise again. That her name not be lost to the knowledge of men. Those who loved her best and were with her till the end will make the Mary Ellen Carter rise again. All spring now we've been with her on a barge lent by a friend. 3 dives a day in hard hat suits, twice I've had the bends. Thank God it's only 60 feet and the currents here are slow, or I'd never have the strength to go below. When we patched her rents, we stopped her vents, dog patch and porthole down. Tight cables to her fore and aft, girded her around. Tomorrow noon we'll hit the air and then take up the strain and watch the Mary Ellen Carter rise again. Rise again, rise again. That her name not be lost to the knowledge of men. Those who loved her best and were with her till the end will make the Mary Ellen Carter rise again. Couldn't leave her there, you see, to crumble in the scale. She'd saved our life so many times, ridden through the gale. And the laughing drunken rats who left her to a sorry grave, they won't be laughing in another day. And you to whom adversity has dealt a final blow, what smiling bastards flying through you everywhere you go. Turn to and put out all your strength of arm and heart and brain, and like the Mary Ellen Carter, rise again, rise again, rise again. Though your heart might be broken and life about to end, no matter what you've lost, be it a home, a love, a friend, like the Mary Ellen Carter, rise again, rise again, rise again. Though your heart might be broken and life about to end, no matter what you've lost, be it a home, a love, a friend, like the Mary Ellen Carter, rise again. As I walked by the dockside one evening so fair, to view the still water and take the salt air, I heard an old fisherman singing this song, saying, take me away, boys, my time is not long. Wrap me up in me oilskins and jumper, no more of the docks I'll be seen. Tell me, oh shipmates, I'm taking a trip, mates, and I'll see you one day on Fiddler's Green. Well, now Fiddler's Green is a place I've heard tell, where fishermen go if they don't go to hell. The weather's clear and there's never a gale, and the fish jump aboard with one swish of a tail. Wrap me up in me oilskins and jumper, no more on the docks I'll be seen. Tell me, old shipmates, I'm taking a trip, mates, and I'll see you one day on Fiddler's Green, where the weather's clear and there's never a gale, and fish jump aboard with one swish of a tail. You can lie in your hammock, there's no work to do, and the skipper's below making tea for the crew. Wrap me up in me oilskins and jumper, no more on the docks I'll be seen. Tell me, oh shipmates, I'm taking a trip, mates, and I'll see you one day on Fiddler's Green. When you pull into port and the long trip is through, there's pubs and there's clubs and there's lassies there too. The girls are all pretty and the rum it is free, and there's bottles of beer growing on every tree. Wrap me up in me oilskins and jumper, no more on the docks I'll be seen. Tell me, oh shipmates, I'm taking a trip, mates, I'll see you one day on Fiddler's Green. Wrap me up in me oilskins and jumper, no more on the docks I'll be seen. Tell me, oh shipmates, I'm taking a trip, mates, and I'll see you one day on Fiddler's Green. Oh, well, thank you. Jesus, would you look at that? The street lights are on. It's time for Rory to go home. I want to thank the Two-Way Street Coffee House for having me here. Joel Simpson, who snuck in the back there, is the guy who invited me. And of course, Jen working tirelessly, and Tim and John putting this together. So come out every week. Folk music is where it's at, man. I've been saying it for 40 years. So thank you for coming out. I really appreciate it, and we seem to be getting back here. I've got some gigs lined up. I sat at home for a long time. I've watched every documentary Netflix has to offer. So it's time to get out of the house. This is the latest I've been out in 2 years. So I'll do one more, and we'll go. The show bands in Ireland used to say, send them home sweating. You can help me sing it in Ireland, although I heard they're changing the rules. The pubs used to have to close at 11 o'clock. Now there's a sad song right there. And as we all know, sad songs say so much. Finally, someone understood that. Finally. It's funny, we're from the north, and my grandfather worked hard his entire life. He was a scutcher. They were the men who cut the flax and put it in the bogs to rot, and then they'd pull the flax and dry it and beat it and turn it into linen. A terrible, dirty job. And when it wasn't flax season, he worked in a rock quarry. And he wore a jacket and tie to work every day. But Sundays was his day off, and you can't get a rake of drink in the north of Ireland on Sundays. But Katy was a border town, and the road between Katy and Castleblaney on Sundays was a long line of men on their bicycles. And my grandfather would tell my granny every Sunday, Sarah, I'm going to Blaney to buy a pair of shoes. And one day he finally remembered to buy himself a pair of boots. and he tied him to the handlebar, and he's riding home, and one fell off. And the next Sunday, he just looked at Sarah and said, I'm going to buy the other one. Thanks for coming out. When the pubs would close, the barman would say, it's time, gentlemen, time. You can help me, it goes like this. And it's time, gentlemen, time. Time, gentlemen, time. Raise your glass to the pleasures that pass. Time, gentlemen, time. Here's to our town, our own Dublin town, where the pubs have to close on time. You're in heaven by 7, thrown out by 11, and they calls it a bloody shame. But it's time, gentlemen, time. Time, gentlemen, time. Raise your glass to the pleasures that pass. Time, gentlemen, time. Here's to our friends, our darling old friends, the ones that are tried and true. For they are the best, and to hell with the rest. There's only one test that will do, and that's time, gentlemen, time. Time, gentlemen, time. Raise your glass to the pleasures that pass. Time, gentlemen, time. Here's to our youth, the days of our youth, how quickly they pass away. But why should we wait until it's too late? Let's kick up our heels today, while there's time, gentlemen, time. Time, gentlemen, time. Raise your glass to the pleasures that pass. Time, gentlemen, time. Here's to the girls, those pretty young girls, the girls that we used to know. Now here's to their lips and their slender little hips. What was it made them grow? It was time, gentlemen, time. Time, gentlemen, time. Raise your glass to the pleasures that pass. Time, gentlemen, time. We'll do it one more time. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Joel. Thanks, Tim, John, Jen. Really appreciate it. So sing it out, and we'll send you home sweating. Time, gentlemen, time. Time, gentlemen, time. Raise your glass to the pleasures that pass. Time, gentlemen, time. Thanks very much.
Oh, what a great evening. This is like, you know, like I said, this is the best crowd we've had since the, well, I wouldn't say the end of COVID, but maybe it's like almost the end. So, yeah, I don't know if you guys want to go home or whether you'd like to hear one more. One more? Rory, do you know one more?
Funny you should say that because I don't.
Oh, no.
So I'm just going to start at the beginning.
All right.
Suppose I could.
For those who came late, this is the first song that he sang.
The song, I couldn't, well, I still can't sing it, but I do my best. I think it's the greatest song ever written. And my father became quite well known for singing it, and I don't think anybody else could sing it. If you ever saw my father singing it, the hair would stand up on the top of your head. He told me when he wrote the song, he wrote it in just 40 minutes. We lived in a town called Dromiskin, which was just south of Dundalk, in the Republic. And my granny and granda were up in Armagh. And one day in 1967, my father decided to go see them. And he drove through Dundalk, and you come to a roundabout where if you go to the right, you're going off to Carlingford. If you go to the left, you're going to go to Castleblaney in County Monaghan. And if you go straight on, it'll take you into Newry and up to Belfast. So that's the road he took. And he just got past Dundalk, and he came to a checkpoint. It was the Irish Army checkpoint. Ah, how you doing there, Tommy? Where are you going? Going to see my parents. Ah, very good. Have a good time. And then about 2 miles go, and you come to the British Army checkpoint in a town called Ravensdale. And of course, they're, what are you doing? You know, whatever they would say. But there was that 2-mile bit of road that the locals called no man's land because nobody wanted it. It didn't belong to the Republic or to the north of Ireland. And my father was driving up to see his parents, and he saw this woman coming out of a field, a very old woman, and she had a cow on a leash. And he thought this was very strange. And the dichotomy hit him. This woman didn't care that there was troubles going on. She had her cow, and she had her jobs to do for the day. And he often thought how Ireland, in good times, was known as a beautiful young woman like Kathleen Houlihan that Yeats wrote about. And he thought, in bad times through history, Ireland's always been known as an old hag, like the Hag of Bear. But he saw it both ways. He saw a beautiful old woman who'd been through so much. Well, he got through the British Army checkpoint, and by the time he got to Katie, he had the song written in his head. And because we're in the season, I've never done it before, but I think I'll start with Heaney's poem. I will dedicate it to those great people in Ukraine. The pockets of our great coats full of barley. No kitchens on the run, no striking camp. We moved quick and sudden in our own country. The priest lay behind ditches with the tramp. A people hardly marching. On the hike, we saw new tactics happening each day. We'd cut through reins and ride her with the pike, and then stampede cattle into infantry, then retreat through hedges where cavalry must be thrown. Until, on Vinegar Hill, the fatal conclave, terraced thousands died, shaking sighs that calloused. The hillside broke in our broken wave. They buried us without shroud or coffin. But in August, the barley grew up out of the grave. What did I have? Said the fine old woman. What did I have? This proud old woman did say, I have 4 green fields. Each one was a jewel, but strangers came and tried to take them from me. I had 5 strong sons. They fought to save my jewels. They fought and died. And that was my grief, said she. Long time ago, said the fine old woman. Long time ago, this proud old woman did say there was war and death, plundering and pillage, my children starve by mountain, valley, and sea, and their wailing cries, they shook the very heavens. My 4 green fields ran red with their blood, said she. What have I now? Said the fine old woman. What have I now? This proud old woman did say, I have 4 green bills. One of them's in bondage in strangers' hands, who tried to take them from me. But my sons have sons as brave as were their fathers. My 4th green field will bloom once again, said she. Thank you very much. Good night. Safe home.